Hey gang, so here we are. We're in the next day of IAE. This is what I like to call the forgotten stepchildren of the verse. This is Kruger, Mirai, and MISC. Mirai is pretty much new, but they're new and not new. It's a subsidiary of MISC. I don't know if you remember back in, I think it was the late 90s or 2000s. Ford Motors actually bought Ferrari. So technically, Ferraris were Fords at that point in time. I think an Italian company bought them back. But yeah, so this is the Ferrari, this is Ford, just to give you an idea. And for a long time, the only two ships we had for Kruger were the Merlin and the Archimedes, which were the snub on the Andromeda, the Aquila, and the Phoenix, respectively. The Phoenix had the Archimedes, which has four size 1 lasers, and I believe the Merlin had two size 2s and one size 3 ballistic gatling that were all bespoke. But now we've obviously got the Wolf, and now the Alpha Wolf. Mirai has obviously the Guardians, the Furies, and things like that. And MISC just added the Fortune and the Starlancer. So these have kind of had a little bit of a resurgence. I'll get into MISC in a little bit because, in my opinion, a lot like they had the year of RSI where they just kind of focused on all the RSI ships. They really need to have a solid focus on MISC, but I'll get to that in a minute. Let's go into the sexy stuff. Kruger. L21 Alpha Wolf. So I'll jump into the sales page in a second here. Let's go ahead and go through all the ships. Let's start with the little guys first. The Merlin was the first one. It's got this big size. I think it's a size 3, and then the size 1's on either side. It's a snub. It does not have a quantum drive. Very good dogfighter if you can shove it in another ship, which it fits in a lot of ships. It's very long, but it's very narrow. Don't make that dirty. And can get very, very hard to hit in a dogfight. So this thing will always be a good dogfighter. If it needs to jump to the fight, it won't be able to do it. Same thing with the Archimedes. Very small, very hard to hit, very maneuverable, very fast. Has 4 energy guns. Not going to do a ton of damage, but if someone is completely ignoring these guys for your constellation, they're going to get ripped up. So they kind of have to focus on it. Thankfully for them, it doesn't take much to kill these things if you can hit them. But let's move up the ladder. And again, this one's $35. This one is $25. So very cheap options if you want a short range fighter. Again, they cannot jump somewhere. The Wolf can jump somewhere. Now, this is a fighter. It has bespoke ballistic weapons. We'll get there in a second. Don't worry. Hands off the keyboards. And a swing keel, which I'll actually let's take a little side tour here. So let's pop on over here to Sailboat Data, which is kind of a cool site that has all this information on all these different types of boats. Now, what they did was they built a keel, and they built a swing keel. Basically, what a swing keel is on smaller boats, typically not something this size, you'd have a keel that could actually swing out and help with stability. And I could go into the physics of how sailboats work, but I'm not gonna. That's a video for another time. What I think they should have done instead is have a rudder. So as opposed to this swinging off the Wolf, you have this, and it could swing down this way or something. But if it had been a rudder, it would stick much closer to the Wolf's concept images. So I did a quick Google image search here, so sorry for the quality of the image. But you can kind of see they had this sort of weird ring thing on the back of it, and this and kind of a combination little elements of the other ones. This is basically the one that became the Wolf, but they had the keel, the sort of fin coming off the back. And if they had kept that for the design right here, as opposed to putting it sort of right underneath the cockpit, I think it would have helped. Anyway, the Wolf, bespoke ballistics, it's always going to be a good dogfighter. It's always going to be fast. It's always going to be maneuverable. It's going to be a smaller target than ships in its class, which are going to be things like the Arrow, the Saber, maybe to a lesser extent the Hornet. Basically ships in that size. It's similar in size and capabilities to those ships. It's going to be a hair smaller and more maneuverable than everything except the Arrow. Arrow's smaller than it. But again, small profile, fast, agile. And now they've added in the Alpha Wolf, which has bespoke energy weapons. And again, hands off the keyboard, I'm getting there. It does not have a keel. It has a tiny little fin right on the bottom of it, but it also has these little side wings. And I'm glad this one is slightly more expensive because I am going to upgrade to this one. I'll get to that in a minute. I kind of like the design of this one better. But you don't really have to pick and choose. And now we'll get into the sale and I'll tell you why. So the L-22 Alpha Wolf, what they've done now, obviously it has the energy weapons in there. You can get a little bit better idea for the tail is a little bit differently laid out, similar to how the Merlin and the Archimedes were. The back's got a little bit more detail on it. Energy weapons. Kruger has beautiful interiors. Like if you're a fan of sports cars, Kruger's where you want to go. They have mentioned that they're going to make more Kruger ships. John Carew has strongly intimated at that, and so we are probably going to be getting, I don't know if they're going to do a whole lineup because their sort of whole bag is these sort of smaller performance vehicles, smaller performance combat vehicles. So I don't know if they'll go the origin route and start making things like the 400i and the 600i. That just doesn't seem to fit their theme. But then again, I mean, Crusader came out with the Ares line and they were supposed to be an industrial kind of mover thing too. So this factory standard looks like that. Antilles, Blues. Again, this is kind of a racing company, so that's sort of what you get. ICE, now you're starting to get into kind of the World War II fighter camo colors. Ranger camo, obviously that. Allegro, kind of a racer color. And then Night Tide is the black camo. And they have said that all the paints are cross-compatible between the L-21, which is here, the regular Wolf with the ballistics, and the Alpha Wolf. And that's not all. It does look from this picture that the Alpha Wolf is slightly larger than the L-21, like just a hair longer. I would assume Foxy is probably going to be doing a video in the not too distant future where he compares the two of them. So I'll wait for that. Again, War Bond, new money, $105. So if you got $105 in your pocket right now, you can throw it into this and get this for $105. If you don't have that in there and you don't go the War Bond route, it is, let's see, how much does this thing cost normally? I guess we don't know what the upgrade is going to be. 120. There it is. Okay, so 105, 120, you can save $15 if you buy it for real money, or you can use credit and spend 120. And you can get both of them for 210. So you can get the regular Wolf with the ballistics and the Alpha Wolf with the lasers. I would recommend not doing this for a very special reason, which I will get into in a second. I would just decide which version you like better. Like if you like the tail fins, or if you like the swing keel, or you kind of like the sleek version, get the regular version or the Alpha Wolf, because they have kits. So there was people in the comments that were kind of getting on me, and they said, we've known for a while that there was going to be a laser version of the Wolf coming out. They kind of mentioned it when they dropped the L-21. But there was some spirited discussion about whether it would be a new vehicle or whether they would just release a kit for it. So now we have the answer. It's both. Now, the thing is that if you like the L-21, you can get the laser weapon kit for the L-21. If you like the ballistics, you can get the ballistics for the Alpha Wolf. So you can have the main distinguishing factor between these two in a kit for for $12, and then drop it on there. What? Why are those different? Kruger Wolf laser kit, Kruger Wolf, Kruger. What's the difference between these two? Oh, these are War Bond. Okay. So yeah, real money, you're saving $3. If you want to use store credit or something, it's 15. Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, now you can mix and match. So the people that I was kind of arguing back and forth with, we were both right. We're both getting a new ship, and we're getting a kit that is cross-compatible with either chassis. So there's that. And we know there's more vehicles coming in the Kruger line. Will they be in the same line? I don't know. The paints are also compatible between all the Wolves, so the L21 and the L22. You can get them all here. Let's see, they got the Night Tide Cambo, which is the Concierge one, and the Pitch Black one, which is pretty cool. The red one, which is really cool. Right, let's see what its name is. There it is, the Rosso. Anyway, I have talked about the Wolf enough, but that is your options right there. You can make a ballistic alpha wolf, or you can make a laser regular wolf. So there you go. MISC. Let's pop on, or no, Mirai. Okay, so we skipped, MISC is the last one. Mirai is kind of the, you see a theme here, the high performance kind of weird version for MISC. And they've got some very interesting ships. They started out with the Fury, and then they made the racing version of the Fury, which is the LX. Then they made the missile version, which is the MX. Just carries, I believe, like 24 size, a mix of 24 size 1 and size 2 missiles. Kind of nice. Once you shoot all those missiles, you have no weapons left. But then again, very, very, very small craft, can fit in a lot of different things. I think it might even fit in a Titan, so you can really make like a turducken thing if you wanted to. I actually have the racer, no guns, no weapons at all. I bought it because I wanted to get into flying the various racetracks that they have around the verse, and then they pulled that as an option from the mission, so you can't do it anymore. This one has 4 size 2 guns. So right now, if you can get a pack of Furies together, you can take out an Idris. That won't be the case for too much longer. Once armor's in the game, those size 2s are not going to do anything. But you can swarm the hell out of a light to probably heavy fighter with those things, and they're going to have a bad day because they'll never be able to hit you. Speaking of heavy fighters, you've got the Guardian, which the base Guardian has 2 size 5s and a whole mess of size 2 to 3. I think they're size 2 missiles. It's 16 size 2 missiles, I believe. But 2 size 5 guns. You can switch them out for other size 5s or whatever. It's pretty hard. Does have an interior. You do have a bed to log out in. You do have a shoilet. You've got kind of a staging area where you can store guns and armor and stuff like that. So you actually can live out of the Guardian. Moving on up, the Guardian MX, you cannot. They've pulled the living area out of this, but you do have 4 size 4s? I think it's 4 size 4s. It hits very hard. It's got more armor than the regular, and it carries a lot more missiles. It's a bit beefier. If you put them next to each other, you can actually see that armor. But again, it's a long-range heavy fighter that does not have an interior. So things like the Vanguard and even the regular Guardian, you can log out in. So it extends the range of the vehicle. This one's always going to have a base of operations, either a bigger ship or an actual base or a space station or something like that. And then we have the QI version, which has obviously a QI. It's an interdictor. I believe this one still has the interior in the 2 size 5s. It might be 2 size 4s. I think they might compromise that, or it has fewer missiles, something like that. But this one has the interdictor. So this one has a living space. This one has a living space. This one does not, but it hits harder and it's got more armor. And then we're over to the Pulses. This is probably one of the most useful bikes. If you want to get a bike in the game, the Pulse is probably the way to go. Got a bespoke gun down here. Very, very, very tiny, so it can fit in a lot of things, which is, till they released the Guardian, was kind of Mirai's whole thing. But you'll see these laying around in places where they shouldn't be, just because they're so easy to get into areas that are tiny. They're like person sized. You can kind of get a sense for how big it is right there. So these are the smallest of the box, or smallest of the bikes. Pocket Rocket. Of course, speaking of Pocket Rocket, they've got a racer version if you want to go full Akira. So they did take a few formerly MISC ships and roll them into Mirai that they decided kind of made more sense with their performance, high quality Mirai than they did with the industrial MISC. And The Razor was one of those. Again, it's a Formula One racer, if you can't tell. It does have fairly good guns on it. Relatively small, can fit in a lot of different ships. Not a bad dogfighter just because it's so fast and small. You'll kind of notice the theme with the dogfighters with that. But they do have the X version, which is a stealth fighter. Very, very fast. Doesn't show up on radar as easy. Obviously, if you're going to go for this as a combat vehicle, probably want to go with this just because it's harder to see. So it's one more element that gives you an advantage. And then they have the LX, which I believe has smaller guns, but a higher top speed. So this is probably the one that you get if you actually want to be a racer. And then we're back to the Fury. And so that is more or less it. The complete Fury pack, or the complete Mirai pack. Of course, the thing that's really kicking up the price there is the Guardians. Eventide paint. This is a new paint. Looks like purple and red. That's kind of cool. And that's it. So let's head on over to MISC. Now, MISC, this is where I'm going to spend a little bit of time because MISC is one where it has some of the oldest ships in the game and some of the ships that are in most need of help. Like you think the Starfarer and the Freelancer are both really, really old at this point, like older than the Cutlass, to give you an idea. So they badly, badly need an update. The interior of the Starfarer is an absolute nightmare, but they also have the Endeavor here, which came out, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks. The concept for this came out, I think, 2 weeks after the Banu Merchantman. And these guys might have an even longer wait than the Merchantman is going to have, just because this thing has so many features that just aren't going to be in the game for a while. What you're seeing here is sort of a front ship. What I think they're going to do, and I'll get to this in a second, this looks so much like the Odyssey. Actually, let's just find the Odyssey. There's the Odyssey. So if you look at the Odyssey right there, and you look at this right here, this looks like an Odyssey. Keep in mind that this image is from 2014 or 2015. So it's a really old image, whereas the Odyssey is only a couple years, like 3 or 4 years old at this point. And it would make a lot more sense to take an Odyssey and just have it that this whole back can attach to it, which is what it does. This whole thing breaks off from the rest of this. This is kind of a station, a modular station that attaches to this. And then there's like a power plant back here that helps push the whole thing through space. But there are so many elements of this ship that just aren't going to be in the game for a while. It's got a radio telescope. It's got a particle accelerator. It's got these farms. It's got a full hospital. Yeah, there's a hangar. I'm trying to think of other things it has, but they'll definitely make more when they do this. But this is just one element that let's just go through it. Anyway, let's move on. The Expanse, not in the game yet. This is a refinery ship, which, I mean, I've thought that we were going to be getting a refinery ship soon for like the last, basically since they rolled this thing out, because they kind of have the basic idea of refining in the game right now. I think they're kind of trying to decide how to gamify it. But I mean, they know how it works, but this is the refiner. Kind of think of it as the Prospector version of the refiner. It's a little bit larger, has a living space, obviously has a big refinery, and can take 8 of the Prospector cargo bags or Argo cargo bags and refine them into stuff. So no more quick runs back to a station to drop off your Quantanium before it explodes. $150, pretty good value for that ship. I would assume that's going to go up when it drops. And when is it going to drop? We don't know. The Fortune. So this is the Salvager, not to be confused with the Prospector. They look very similar. Think of this as like the Vulture for MISC. Good interior, stuff like that. So if you kind of like this retro sort of silvery industrial style over Drake style, this is the way to go. It only has 1 laser over 2, but I believe it is more efficient than the Vulture, but the Vulture has 2 lasers. Obviously clunky. I think they both carry 12 SCU, and 12 in the hopper, so you're fine there. This one actually prints them out and puts them externally. So this one would play very nice with like a whole A. A whole A could just fly alongside this thing and you could pop off the boxes while this thing produces them. $175. Obviously, I think that's more expensive than the Vulture. The Freelancer series, this thing is ancient at this point. It's really, really, really showing its age. It's got 4 seats up front, 4 beds, kind of has a toilet and like a crew room, but it's not a 4-person craft, it's a 2-person craft. So really they need to pull those seats, just rethink the entire thing. And it kind of seems like they're going to be leaning that direction. And the same is true for all the Freelancers. You got the Dur, which is the Explorer. It has longer range. It has these bigger fuel tanks. You have the Masks, which actually is relatively useful. It flies faster than the other ones and it has double the cargo bay. This one actually does have a use in the verse right now as a cargo runner. You'll still see these. You'll never see the other Freelancers. The MISC, just a ton of missiles. This is a missile boat. Again, same problems as the other ones. It has more hit points. The whole A, this one carries, it has 2 panels here and 2 panels on the other side. Externally, it unfolds. Kind of a starter, but it carries more cargo than any of the other starters. $90, so it's kind of in that Titan area, but way, way, way more cargo. So this is a specialized ship. And then got the whole B. Now this thing is dropping into the verse soon. They're working on it right now. And this thing will carry, I think, almost double the amount of cargo that the Raft does, which is a whole category of ships larger. This thing is about the size of a Freelancer. This thing will be really, really, really useful in the game. In fact, I'm going to get a CCU from the whole A to the whole B and then apply it when it's in the game, just because I think the whole B, especially if you're going to get into base building, anything like that, will be extremely useful. Whole C right now is the main cargo mover. Its loop is a little broken, but lore-wise, it is the most common ship in the game, or in the verse. In reality, not so much. And then you got the whole D, which is a whole class larger, huge, where this thing has 2 arms, or 2 sets of arms. This thing has 3. And then you got the whole D, which is just ridiculous amounts of cargo. This is the kind of thing where an entire org has one whole E, and that is their source of income, because that, even if you're just buying like sand, that is going to be an enormous investment, and you'll be able to make an enormous profit, and it'll be a huge target. So you will have to be escorting this thing, probably with things like Persei or Polarises or Idrises, just to make sure your org doesn't take that hit. The Odyssey. So one of the things I like to talk about with the Odyssey is that the Odyssey is MISC's version of the Carrack. It's larger and it has a gigantic hangar, where the Carrack is an explorer. I like to say that the Odyssey is an exploiter. It also has a mining head up here, so it can do its own mining, refine its own quantum fuel. So far, they've said that it just refines quantum fuel for itself. I would imagine they're going to change that at some point. Very large ship, very cool ship, very small crew. You could almost see yourself soloing this thing. I would not recommend that, especially with engineering coming. Basically, whatever you put in its big hangar will kind of define what it does. So you could put a MISC Fortune in there, or a Prospector, or a Terrapin. You get the idea. What you're putting in this hangar is kind of going to define what the ship is going to do for you. $700, pretty steep, but it is creeping into the capital ship category. Prospector is the OG miner, still really does have a place in the verse. Golem carries the same amount of cargo, but it doesn't, its mining head is bespoke, whereas the Prospector's isn't. Sorry, my dogs are going a little crazy this morning, so I keep getting interrupted. The Reliant series. The Reliant series is another version of a ship that is just badly in need of an update. it was a very, very early concept. It's cool. It kind of flips vertically, but its cross section is enormous. It is huge. Like, I believe from wingtip to wingtip is about the same as the length of a freelancer. So you basically have a freelancer flying at you sideways. So a really target to hit either from this side or the front. Maybe top down, it's not as bad, but kind of a cool ship. This is a ship that for a long time, if I were bringing someone into the verse, I would fly them around in a Reliant series just because you sit side by side and it's got an amazing view from this cockpit. Execute and I did a talk on the Reliant series and just kind of things that they could do to modernize it and fix it. But again, you'll notice that's the theme of MISC is outside of the Starlancer and the Fortune. And the Prospector actually holds up these days. They're just really outdated ships. Then you got the Mako. So the Mako is a news van. A news van. It has a camera on it. Are we going to have news making in the verse? Are they going to make OBS available for editing videos on your ship? No. What is newscasting or reporting going to be? We don't know. So yeah, again, this is a ship that came out, the concept came out in an early days when they're like, we can do everything. And it's kind of like now we're looking at going, what the hell is this thing? So if you're role playing, you might want to get the Reliant Mako. It does have a cool interior. Again, great views. Probably not bad for capturing video. It does have the extra camera that you could run from a turret. So there is that. The Sen is the science version. Again, we don't have science, but I assume when they update, this will probably have crafting in it. It doesn't yet, though. Again, very dated chips. The Tana actually isn't a bad bounty hunting ship for two people or like running bunkers. It does, you can put pretty big guns on the wingtips. I would say definitely more of a PvE ship than a PvP ship. You do not want to go up against another player in a Reliant, not if they know what they're doing. Starfare. Again, refueler in the verse. Unfortunately, they've made the ranges of all the ships in the game so large that there really isn't a use for this ship. You're almost never running out of fuel while you're dinking around a system or traveling between systems, because the distances between stations are so close that even the smallest ships with a quantum drive can easily jump station to station rather than needing to rely on something like a Starfare. Starfare might be useful for like a big fleet of pirates where you can't land at as many places, but it really doesn't have a purpose in the game right now. I think that they should increase the size of systems, increase the distance between, so that smaller ships either have to travel on larger ships or they have to rely on something like the Starfarer to be sitting at a midpoint. And then it would give this ship a purpose and it would make the verse feel a little bit larger. Whereas right now it feels a little claustrophobic. The interior of this ship is jacked. When they originally built this ship, they had FPS level designers, like think deathmatch level designers designing the interiors of ships. And so they basically designed a deathmatch level for the ship, which you kind of want those things to be maze-like and have a bunch of areas where you can sort of take a shortcut and pop out here and take a shortcut and pop out here. And if you know the map, you have a huge advantage over people who don't. And that's a great design for an FPS level. It is trash for a ship interior. You want a ship interior, especially for something industrial like this, to be very intuitive and very straightforward. And they move that direction nowadays. Badly needs an update. But it is kind of in a cool category. Carries a fair amount of cargo in addition to the fuel pods back there. And refueling does work right now. People can refuel from this ship. It's just There's not really a need. So this is the civilian version. It has a scoop up front. At one point, they were talking that this would be able to refine gas, but now quantum fuel is a rock that you blow up with a prospector and then refine at a station. So this isn't going to be refueling quantum fuel that way. So we don't quite know what the gas refining will be, or if they're just going to ditch it. This one ditches the refinery for a huge missile pod up front. This one has slightly larger guns, more armor, more hit points. This is the military version. This is the Gemini. Not much to say about it that doesn't apply to the regular Starfare. Moving on, the Starlancer Max. This is the cargo version. It carries cargo on little drop downs. The Starlancer is pretty much new, and it shows what they could do with MISC. And when they released the Starlancer, I was like, oh, cool. Now they're going to swing back and they're going to redo the Starfare. They're going to redo the Freelancer. They pretty much dropped the Starlancer on us and then dropped the Fortune on us and then called it good. Don't know what that'll mean. But anyway, we got the Starlancer Max, which is the cargo version. The TAC sacrifices a little bit of the cargo room for like drop pods. These sides drop down and they're just jump seats. Much larger guns on the side. It's very slow, kind of heavily armored. You can tell by where the turrets are. They show it fighting spaceships here, but it's much more effective fighting things on the ground. There is a third version called the BLD, which is going to have drones that'll be able to build things. They haven't sold it for concept yet. We just know it's there. When they sold the Starlancer, they said these are the 3 variants. They dropped the Max on us. And then a month later, they dropped the TAC on us. And then the BLD is just out there in concept land until they get around to start doing construction. And this one, I flipped my Max, even though I'm more of a cargo runner these days, for attack, just because I think this one's probably going to be more useful for doing anything. This is kind of a mini Carrack. It has a really tiny hangar up top that you can fit a Fury in, and it's got a couple med beds. So a lot more utility on this one. This one's a little bit more focused. I'd almost say, rather than a Max, this one's more of a DUR. This one is more of an explorer than a cargo mover. It can move a fair amount of cargo, though. But anyway, that is the Starlancers, that is MISC, and that is the sale today. Let's go ahead and look at the paints. We got a new paint down here, the Iceberg. Looks like it's black and white, which they've had before, but with little blue trim in there. Kind of cool. And all these other paints pop up on the regular, so no real push to get those. But other than that, gang, that is Kruger, Mirai, and MISC Day. So let me know if you have any of these ships, if you think that the grand MISC rework is coming pretty soon. I mean, I think the Starlancer kind of set the standard for where they want to go with that series. Mirai is very cool, and the Mirai Guardian MX is not quite meta, but of all of the heavy fighters, it's probably the best heavy fighter right now, honestly. And gang, that's all I got for this one. Let me know what you think down below. Catch you next time.